Hey guys, Pastor Ben here with another video. I want to do a little bit of a different video today. I'm recording this at the beginning of January 2025. So kind of looking back at last year, 2024, looking ahead to 2025. And what I want to do is just a video to kind of review last year in terms of my reading and in terms of the channel, and then look ahead to the year to come. So first off, I just want to say thank you to everyone who has taken the time to watch my videos or watch any of my videos. I'm constantly amazed that people actually do that. The reason I started this channel, I think about a year or so ago, I can't even remember, was really for myself. The goal of this channel is to force me to reflect on what I'm reading and to capture those reflections in some form. If I was a more disciplined person, what that would probably look like is taking the time to write reviews and notes for what I'm reading. But I'm not as disciplined as I want to be. I can write, I have written, I've published things here and there, but I tend to only write when someone's holding a gun to my head. And since no one is doing that right now, I take the lazy way out and I just put my phone on a stand and talk for 10 to 20 minutes and try to kind of capture my thoughts that way. So what I'm doing is really for my own benefit, trying to force myself to reflect on what I'm reading and capture those reflections in some way. I have found it useful to have those videos that I can then go back and review myself if I'm trying to remember what did I think about a particular work. Or pastorally, people will sometimes ask me, hey, is there a book you would recommend on X, Y, or Z? And if I've done a video on it, I can say, yeah, here's a book that I read recently, and here's my thoughts on it. So it's been useful from that vantage point. But I have intentionally not approached this channel as a kind of growth project. You know, I'm not trying to build the channel. You probably noticed I don't ask people to like or subscribe. I actually have turned off the comments to my videos, and the reason for that is because if I have the comments on, I'm distracted and tend to like go and check the comments and want to see what people are saying and interact. And frankly, I don't really have the time to do that. I'm not trying to build this as a channel. I don't make any money off of this. This is more for my own benefit, but since I'm doing the videos anyways, I thought I might as well post them and make them available. Hopefully they're helpful to people, and that's really the goal of my channel. So this is very different. You know, my sister, Katie Walkus, has a YouTube channel, Life in the Mundane. She did a shout out for me recently, and so I'll do a shout out for her. However, this is a little bit like David doing a shout out for Goliath, because I have reached now, as of today, almost 640 subscribers, and have closing in on 50,000 views, which is amazing to me that there's that many people who would subscribe and watch these videos. My sister, however, has been doing this for a couple of years, and she does it very intentionally. She's a very good YouTuber, and she has, I should have checked before I started this video, but she's got more like 20,000 subscribers or more than that now. And has her channel has been viewed more than 1 million times. She posts regularly and is very good at what she does. But that's not how I've kind of approached this channel. It's more of a personal project, and I'm putting it out there in case it's of interest to anyone. So thank you to everyone who has watched and who has subscribed. I don't know why you do it, but I'm glad that you do. As I look back at this last year, I'm very grateful for a good year of reading. Paradoxically, forcing myself to record review videos of the books that I read has actually, I think, helped me to read more. I keep a running list of all the books that I read, and I read 63 books in 2024, which I think is maybe the most books that I've read, at least as an adult. You know, one of the things that I found is when I was a kid, I just read novels and things, and so I could read tons and tons and tons of stuff. I read less now, but hopefully I read more deeply and works that are a bit more demanding at times, although there's still lots of fun books, novels, children's books that I've really enjoyed reading over the last year. So I've been grateful to read 63 books. When I tally up how many pages that is, that's something like 14,600 pages that I read from my books this last year. I also, of course, read I did a video on this at the end of 2024. What am I reading when I'm not reading books? And I kind of went through some of the publications that I read, and there's lots of articles and stuff like that. So I've read more than that, but in terms of cover to cover books, I was able to read through a lot this last year. And then when I look back through that, I'm grateful for the fact that that's spanning a lot. There's books on science, there's historical books, there's literary books, there's theological works, there's new works, there's old works. So I'm grateful for that kind of spread. So I wanted to just sort of reflect a little bit on, again, this last year of reading and where I am in the channel, and say thank you to everyone who watches and subscribes. But I also want to talk a bit about my goals for this next year. Again, my goal is not really to grow this channel per se, but I will continue to read, and I will continue to record my reviews and reflections on what I read, because I'm finding that personally profitable, and hopefully it's helpful to some other people. And as I look towards 2025, there is a goal that I have in mind. This is, I don't know if you qualify this as a New Year's resolution. I'm not super huge on New Year's resolutions, but if I've got one, this is it. The goal is to read more big books. What do I mean by that? Well, when I look at what I'm reading, a lot of what I'm reading is smaller books, 100 to 300 page books. And those are very valuable. That's kind of the bread and butter for most people. If I'm doing a Sunday school class, or we're going through a book as a session, or I'm looking for a book to hand out to someone, usually something in that range is what I'm going to be pointing people to. There's a lot of wonderful, wonderful works that kind of fall within that parameter. But of course, as you can see behind me especially, there are a lot of works that are very important and very helpful and very valuable that are bigger than that. Books that are, maybe single volumes that are significant, that are, 500 to 1,000 pages, or as I've got here behind me on my shelf, multi-volume work. So I've got Beeke and Smalley's 4-volume systematic theology, or Wilhelmus Sabrakel's 4-volume systematic theology, or Turretin's 3-volume systematic theology, things like that. Or again, single volume works like Calvin's Institutes of the Christian Religion. This is clocking in at around 1,000 pages. These are all really important works, and I have a lot of these works, not just behind me, but in other places on my shelves, and I've read from many of them. Some of them I have read cover to cover, like I've read Calvin's Institutes before, but most of these bigger books I have not read cover to cover. I've read from them, but I haven't read them in their entirety. Now, let me jump in at this point and say, I don't necessarily see that as a problem. When you're looking at some of these multi-volume works, there's at least two ways to use these kinds of works. The first way is as reference works. And as a pastor, these are really valuable tools for me from that vantage point. I often find myself pulling one of these volumes off the shelf in my preaching and in my teaching to help me. So for example, I have been preaching through the kind of summary of the doctrines of the Bible recently, and we're using the Heidelberg Catechism to work through that. So as I'm doing that, there's a couple of works that I've been drawing from. Let me grab one of them. Should have prepared this better, sorry. This is, again, if I was a real YouTuber, I would edit those kinds of things out, but I just can't be bothered. So as I've been preaching through the Heidelberg Catechism, I've also been reading through Ursinus's commentary on the Heidelberg Catechism. This is actually a commentary on the Heidelberg Catechism written by the guy who wrote the Heidelberg Catechism. But it's a longer work. It's somewhat scholastic. It's, 650 pages. So I'm just kind of reading through it as I go. I'm also have been referencing Herman Witsius's. He has a 2-volume set, Sacred Dissertations on the Apostles' Creed. Part of the Heidelberg Catechism is going through the Apostles' Creed. So I'll pull works like that off the shelf and reference them and read them as I'm teaching or preaching. I'll also have people that will ask me questions, or I'll be thinking about something, and so I may go and read a bit of Bavinck or read some of Turretin or something like that to help me answer those questions. And that's a really valuable and important way to use these significant books or these multi-volume works. So I will just say that because I think sometimes people feel intimidated by big sets like this, and they don't get them because they think, when am I going to sit down and read, 3,000 pages, for Bavinck or something like that. On the other side, some people rush out and buy these works, and then they feel guilt because they haven't read them cover to cover. Most people have not read them cover to cover. I remember being at a conference and hearing Chad Van Dixhoorn was speaking. He's a great scholar, great theologian, gifted pastor, and Kevin DeYoung was doing the Q&A, and he asked, I loved this question, he said, what book have you not read that people probably assume you have read? And he said, he was asking that question because he realizes, pastors and theologians can kind of give the impression, oh, we've read everything. That's not true. Many of us, we've dipped into works, we've read from works, but we haven't read them cover to cover. And Chad Van Dixhoorn said, I've never actually read all of Turretin. He's like, of course I've referenced Turretin, but I've not just read through these 3 volumes. I really appreciated his honesty in saying that. And I would say the same thing. As a pastor, I have read from, I think, all of these volumes you can kind of see behind me, but I don't think I've read cover to cover any of these sets in their entirety. So my goal for this next year is to begin to read through more of these. Again, not because you have to read it cover to cover to make it worthwhile. I think referencing them, reading from them is valuable and important, but there's also something you get in terms of a mental and theological and intellectual discipline and development when you do engage with a significant writer and a significant work through a longer volume like Calvin's Institutes, or through a multi-volume work like some of these systematic theologies behind me. So how am I going to do that, both for myself and in terms of the channel? This is what I'll kind of end with. My goal is to read bigger books. How do you do that? Well, if you have tried to read through a significant work yourself before, or if you read people who talk about how to read a big book, how to read a big multi-volume set, the answer is you read a big book by making it into small books. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. That's kind of the philosophy that I'm going to be taking here. So my goal personally is really just to begin to read from some of these significant 1-volume works or multi-volume works by reading 5 to 10 pages a day alongside my devotional reading. So in the morning when I get up and I do my family or my personal worship before family worship, I want to add to that routine the discipline of reading 5 to 10 pages from a significant work of theology. So what I'm doing right now, what I'm hoping to begin doing, is to begin reading through Calvin's Institutes. There's actually reading plans you can go through. I'm not going to be strictly following a reading plan. I'm just going to be kind of working my way steadily through Calvin's Institutes. And then I'm also going to, just to make my life a little bit harder, read alongside of that from volume 1 of Bavinck's Reformed Dogmatics, his volume on Prolegomena. So my goal is to read 5 to 10 pages cumulatively from both of these. So a few pages from Calvin, 4 or 5 pages from Bavinck, and just begin to eat the elephant, taking it one small chunk at a time. Now, one of the reasons I think, if I'm honest with myself, that I don't always invest in those multi-volume works is because it takes you a long time, to read 1,000 pages of 16th century theology, if you're going through Calvin, for example. And yet, when I'm putting together my list of books that I read, that's still just one book. If I'm looking at my channel here, that's just one review video. And so sometimes there's an impetus to say, okay, well, let me grab a smaller book so I can read it, so I can add it to my list, so I can make a review video, and that can sometimes be a driver. It shouldn't be, but sometimes it is. So what I'm going to do, both to kind of address that barrier and also to maybe deepen my reading of these multi-volume works, because one tendency can be to kind of just start skimming it, is I'm going to break down my reflections on those works. So here's kind of my thought. We'll see how this goes. For example, as I'm reading through Calvin over the coming months, what I want to do is probably do one video that will give a a bit of biography about Calvin, and then give a bit of an overview of this work. What is this work? And then kind of give a guide to the particular edition that I'm working with. With a lot of these multi-volume works or significant single-volume works, there's multiple translations, there's multiple editions. So just kind of knowing what am I reading is the goal. So I do one video that's really just description. I'm not interacting with the book. I'm not giving you my thoughts on the book, but I'm just sort of orienting to what is this work. So that would be one video. And then as I'm reading through it, what I would then do is do a separate review video for each part of the book. And that doesn't mean each chapter or each paragraph. I'm not going line by line. But if you look at Calvin's Institutes, for example, it's broken up into 4 different sections. Usually book 1, book 2, book 3, book 4 is kind of how it's designated. And so what I would do then is once I've read the first 18 chapters, which is book 1, I would do a review video on book 1 of Calvin's Institutes. Similarly, for Bavinck, for example, I might do one video that's just kind of orienting to his dogmatics as a whole. Who is Bavinck? What's he doing in this work? A bit about the edition and how it's laid out. But then as I read through those volumes, I might do a review video either on every part. He has his first volume broken up into 5 parts, or I might take part 1 and part 2 and do a review video. So just kind of taking smaller chunks and doing review videos on that. That helps me to keep producing videos regularly and not having to wait till I've read a whole 1,000-page book to do that. It also means that those videos can be a bit more digestible rather than me trying to review a 1,000-page work or a 700-page work. I can maybe pull out 150 or 200 pages of that and give you some thoughts. So hopefully that'll be valuable for you. I think it will definitely be valuable for me. And again, that's kind of my goal. Not to be selfish, but my goal is to basically be reading more and to be reading better. So thank you for everyone who has watched in 2024. Thank you to everyone who has subscribed. I'm grateful for that. I hope that these videos are helpful and that you can use them to spur on your own reading or maybe to share with others who are looking for good things to read. And that is my goal for 2025, to read bigger books one bite at a time.